Alright, welcome back everybody. Welcome to the second reading of Hope. I'm really glad to have all of you with me. I've actually been very excited about getting back to reading this all night long. This really is my favorite story. I have to admit, I am pretty biased. But yeah, I hope you all enjoy today, and without further ado, we're going to get to it. I did want to mention that because chapters are different lengths, I had originally said it'll be 20 minutes a day, but plan for 20 to 30 minutes. I'll make it somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes, depending on the lengths of the chapters. That way we can make sure we get through a chapter on a given day. Alright, so with that, Chapter 3, The Camden Pass. As he left the tavern, Alva realized that he had 10 days to kill. Brescia and the surrounding landscape were no place to spend 10 days, so he decided to take a ride through the Camden Pass. He had not been through the pass for at least 20 changes of season, the last time being with his father. It was a day's ride from Brescia to get there, and 2 days' ride through it. This gave Alva plenty of time for relaxed camping, reading, and reflection. Alva enjoyed solitude when there was no job to be done, and this would be an especially good time since he would remember the places his father had pointed out to him and the stories behind them. Since he had gone through the last time, he and his father had also spent some time with Pincer, an old friend of his father. Now he could try to put places together with Pincer's stories as well. Good old Pincer. The one thing Alva had not learned from his father was how to have a sense of humor. This he had learned from Pincer. Pincer made his living the same way as Alva, and occasionally he and his father had worked jobs together with him. Pincer had a wife, still living so far as Alva knew, and 5 daughters who had married well in the working class. Alva had met his wife once. She was a very short woman, and nearly as round as the mayor of Brescia. They made a humorous couple, as Pincer was a short, broad man with thick arms. Pincer's wife had a forceful personality and was fond of giving orders, but they were very happy, and it was clear they loved one another dearly. I wonder how that old man is getting on, Alva thought. Alva purchased supplies for his bivouac and left on his gray horse that very afternoon. He rode till sundown and then camped on the hard ground halfway to the pass. When he was moving fast, Alva's camp consisted of a fire and bedroll, nothing more. On the pass he would camp more comfortably, but this was no place for leisure. He rose before the sun and rode for the pass. As he drew closer, the hard, cracked ground began to reveal patches of grass and periodic chaparral thickets. He also saw an occasional stream flowing from the mountains to the Delena River. The river stretched from the Camden Mountains through the Kuragan Hills, all the way to the other side of Lasania. As he approached the base of the mountains, the chaparral became thicker and thicker. He came to a wide path that led up to the pass. The ground on either side of the path was mostly covered with grass now. Because Alva knew what to look for, he spied out occasional patches of scorched ground underneath the grass. This plain had seen the third phase of the battle for the Camden Pass, the main part of the Huron-Lasanian War. The Camden Mountains separated the twin kingdoms of Huron and Lasania. Their snow-capped peaks were far too high to move any army over. Thus, the pass was the only means of entrance. Lasania was a gigantic valley with mountains on all sides. Even the Kuragan Hills in the east were a natural barrier. This was why a small kingdom like Laconia had remained independent for so long. Oh well, Alva thought. Like Father always said, nothing lasts forever. Alva took the 2-day journey through the pass in 3 days. There were fine places for camping with cold streams for bathing and drinking, and thick patches of grass along the trail for sleeping. Alva had spent thousands of nights sleeping on hard ground, so sleeping on grass always felt like a royal luxury. For him, it felt like lying down in a feather bed, only without the annoying rustle of feathers beneath him. The air was fresh and clear, and Alva breathed deeply and felt his head clear. There were healthy rabbits to shoot with his bow for frying or stewing. Alva always kept a few books with him, and he spent long hours reading. Usually he would have one book on warfare tactics, one on philosophy, and one work of literature. On this journey he had brought Blinding the Enemy, a book on surprise attacks, as well as the ethical treatises of Divan the Great and The Wild Donkey of Mavarin, a tale from Laconia's ancient days. The wild donkey was actually an ancient tribal chieftain who had been a great warrior. As Alva traveled up the pass, he thought it was amazing that such a beautiful and tranquil place had drank so much blood 40 changes of season before. A change of season, or a season change, is how Laconians referred to a full cycle of the 4 seasons, or what we today would call a year. As Alva rode higher, the pass began to feel more enclosed. On either side there were large gray boulders. Some of the boulders were in piles, and some gigantic ones were standing all on their own. Interspersed with these boulders, there were some short cedar trees. The trees did not grow very tall here, but they had been around a long time. Alva almost felt a kinship with these trees. Like him, they had been around a long while and had seen a lot of fighting at one time. If one rode off the pass through the trees and boulders, very soon he would come to the steep slopes of the mountains which towered on either side. On the second day, he came to the center pass, or pass within the pass. 2 high and wide peaks of solid granite stood side by side, with only enough room for 40 horses to walk through the center abreast. Here was the site of the second phase of the battle. The battle for the Camden Pass was actually several battles, lasting about 5 season changes. But there were 3 crucial turning points which caused the war to progress. These were the 3 phases of the battle. Though most of the rubble had been cleared, Alva could see an occasional fallen boulder. How surprised the Hurons must have been when the mountains began to come down on their heads. What a bitter victory for them, Alva thought as he chuckled at his father's ingenuity. As he rode downhill from the center pass, Alva came to a side road leading to the Eye. If he went straight, the road led to Huron. He had traveled into Huron with his father last time and had no desire or time to go there again, so he took the road to the Eye instead. The Eye was a high, round surface, carved from a broad hilltop over the cliffs which overlooked the Huron Empire. For hundreds of season changes, it was the site of a Laconian fort designed to watch for possible Huron armies massing for invasion. Huron had been a powerful empire for hundreds of season changes and had conquered many smaller kingdoms to the west. Laconia, though small, was a kingdom of fierce warriors that was well protected by the Camden Mountains. Finally, the Hurons had felt they had grown strong enough, and the invasion had come. Alva rode up to the eye. It was a good place for sword practice and relaxation. Not far down the road from it, there was a large pool which was fed by a higher spring. It was a fine place for swimming. From the eye, Alva had a clear view of the entrance to the pass on the Huron side. There was the place of the first phase of the battle. There the Hurons had been held back for 3 changes of season. There his second oldest brother had fallen. Alva was his father's 3rd son, but he had not met either of his brothers. His father had lost his second son below, his firstborn having fallen during the 3rd phase on the other side of the pass. Alva pulled out his looking wand and surveyed the battleground below. Looking wands had been invented by the ancient luminaries of Lacinia as a way to see a long way off. While this was done by the proper use of glass, they were called wands because the effect seemed like magic. As Alva looked at the ridge below, he saw the remains of Lacinian catapults and the giant crossbows his father had designed. What a man his father had been! What had he not known? Tall, strong, grim, fearless. What a man! They had had sword practice almost every day of Alva's life that he could remember. The only exceptions were days when they had had a difficult skirmish. The easy skirmishes were not sufficient practice in his father's eyes. They had had sword practice the day before his death, even though his father had seen well over 90 season changes by then. No one lives forever, Alva chuckled as he remembered his father's oft-repeated phrase. As Alva looked and reflected, he saw a cloud of dust approaching the pass. Looking through his wand, he could make out that there were figures on horseback, and one carriage. It was a small caravan of some sort. As they drew closer, Alva saw that the carriage was enclosed. It was white with silver lining. The lining looked like actual silver from this distance. There were many soldiers on horseback following behind the carriage, but the 2 in the front particularly caught his attention. They rode on large horses which were completely black and wore black armor with their black visors down. Alva had read enough literature to be familiar with the motif of the Black Knight. But this was no storybook. These black soldiers had a look of foreboding, the like of which Alva had never seen. Suddenly he found himself shivering, even though the sun was shining brightly. He had been sweating minutes before, but now he felt cold. This was no mind trick. He actually was cold beneath the bright sun. His keen eye noticed that the birds nearby were shivering too. But there was something else. He felt something deep within that he had not felt since he was a small boy. Something that his father had taught him not to feel. Fear. Alva had faced death numerous times. He was not afraid of dying. He had no living family and nothing to lose. He had no fear of pain, yet he felt fear. For no rational reason, for a reason beyond thought or description, he was afraid. Alva Dene was afraid. Alva mastered himself, but these feelings stayed with him until late in the afternoon. By then the caravan had had time to travel well into the past behind Alva, and there were many miles of solid rock between him and it. They had no interest in the eye. They were headed for Lacinia. For what? He wondered. This brought other questions to his mind, which he then thought of for the rest of his time camping in the eye. Why had that woman offered to reward him for returning that sword? Why 10 days? What would his reward be? Was there even really a reward? Was this a joke? As the days wore on, he greatly anticipated seeing the lady again. Chapter 4, Alva's Reward. Alva broke his camp in the Eye and journeyed back through the pass in plenty of time to meet his 10-day mark. The night before the meeting, he camped outside of Gracia, on the other side of the farms. He planned to arrive at the same time he had arrived before, which was around 10 o'clock. In his mind, he saw alternately visions of the lady sitting there waiting for him, or of him sitting down and waiting while she made her entrance. What could the reward possibly be? The morning of the meeting, Alva rose early and rode into town. He put his gray horse in the local stable and headed for the tavern. On the way there, he passed the peacemaker captain, looking less handsome with a slightly crooked nose. As they passed, their eyes met. Alva smiled gloatingly as he greeted him. "Captain?" The captain just gave him a sulking look and kept walking. As he entered the tavern, Alva saw Salia, the same skinny farmer, and a man sitting at a large square table in the center of the room. There was no sign of the woman. "Hello, Alva," Sal called out. "Morning, Sal. Morning, Salia," Alva said. Salia mumbled, "Morning." And then she turned and walked into the back room. "Wow," Alva chuckled to himself. "I haven't broken a heart since before the last time I went through the Camden Pass." He observed the man at the center table. He was of medium size with light brown hair and a light brown beard. A mug of some steaming beverage was sitting before him. It was not often It was not often that Alva met a man he wasn't certain he could defeat in battle, but this was such a man. He had an air. No look of pride, but a look of pure nobility, handsome and wise. His age was difficult to guess. He might have seen anywhere between 30 and 50 changes of season. His facial features had a look Alva knew well and did not care for. Yet this man seemed difficult not to like. Somehow Alva knew that his meeting would be with this man and not the lady. The man's eyes met him and gave him a knowing look, so he walked up to the table and sat down. For a long time they stared into one another's eyes, studying one another. They made quite a pair for anyone who might see them, Alva looking rough and rugged, while this man was clean and polished. "I was expecting a lady, not a Huron lord," Alva said at last. "She said you were a keen observer," the man replied. "I hope you're not here to give me a kiss." The man smiled and said, "She also said you had a quick mouth." "Yes, but not for kissing Huron lords." At this point Sal approached the table. "Two of my favorite customers sitting together," he said. "Expensive day for the mayor. Both of you are always to dine on his account." "Perhaps it would be better if he fed poor men on his account," said Alva. "Oh, there are several of those as well," Sal replied. It's a wonder our patron doesn't go broke," said Alva with a smile. "If he hasn't broken his own fortune yet," the man across the table replied, "I'm sure we will hardly make a dent." All three laughed. "Steak, eggs, potatoes, and ale for you, Alva?" Sal asked. "Salia isn't in an order-taking mood just now." "That'll be perfect, Sal. Thank you," Alva replied. Sal then left to help cook Alva's breakfast. "A little early for ale, isn't it?" the man asked. "Not for me." "Perhaps you drink too much." "Perhaps, but I haven't had a glass in 10 days. "You are Alva?" "Yes." "Your name means his own, does it not?" "Yes. Your lordship understands the old Lacinian. I do. Why is it, do you suppose, that you were given that name? Who knows, said Alva. He did know, but preferred to keep it private. I know this may be hard to believe, he continued, but I've spent 10 days wondering what kind of reward I might receive from a strange lady for returning a sword to a second-rate peacekeeper. It's not hard to believe. The reward will actually come from me. The Lady Nera is in my service. Nera, Alva said with a smile. The man gave Alva a smile in return, but a smile with a slight scoff. It was the kind Alva's childhood friends made just before they said, yeah, right. She's not your wife? Alva asked. No, she is in my service. Doing what? I prefer to ask the questions. That's not how I play, Alva replied. In that case, I prefer not to answer them. Fair enough. We were talking about a reward. What would that be? A job. That's quite a reward, Alva said sarcastically. I do tend to have a lot of trouble finding work. Do you have trouble finding work that pays 10,000 pieces of gold? Your lordship has my attention, Alva replied. 10,000 pieces of gold were enough for a family of 5 to live on for 100 season changes in the current Lacinian economy. What kind of reward are we talking about? He asked. I don't do assassinations. So I hear. The work is protection. Protecting what? Hope. Hope? Hope. This conversation has now ceased to make sense to me, Alva said in a tone that was an exact division of sarcastic, confused, and curious. The man smiled. I would like you to be part of a team of 10 bodyguards who, under my leadership, will safely protect a person of some importance on a journey from the Camden Mountains to the lands beyond the Curraghon Hills. Do you know the Curraghon Hills? I know them well. It's an easy journey until you reach them, but a difficult journey to pass through them. Hence the needs for the bodyguards. And you are ready to hire me on the spot? Yes, if you can follow orders. Alva. The stress the man put on his name told Alva that he knew his name had more significance than Alva was letting on. My father always said, give your man a sword if it suits your purpose, but never give him your heart. I'll obey as long as I'm under contract. But why me? You come highly recommended. By whom? My good friend, Balsasar. I think I should tell you, for the sake of full disclosure, Alva said, that the mayor has only seen me 3 times for no more than 5 minutes each time, and my work has consisted of the extremely difficult job of delivering message to and from him. The last one was a message to Sal telling him that I dine on his account. He is the best soul in the world, but he may be over-generous. It is possible that he is not the best man to assess my qualifications. Don't underestimate Balsasar, the man said. I trust his judgment implicitly. This statement was clearly no joke. It seemed odd to Alva, but he did not challenge it. Who are the other members of the team? He asked. You'll meet them soon enough if you take the job. I suppose there's great danger, but 10,000 gold pieces is worth just about any danger. I'll take the job on one condition. Whatever may happen, I will not hurt or kill innocent people. You will not be asked to do so. Then I'm your man. Good. Meet me at this location tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I will have your contract to sign, and we will begin immediately. The Lord handed Alva a folded sheet of paper. Inside was a map. One last question, Alva said. What do I call you, sir? I am called Hellel. Until tomorrow, then. With that, the man rose and left the tavern. Alva, like everyone in Lacinia, had heard the name Hellel. He could, of course, be lying about his name, but Alva knew a Huron lord a mile away. He'd never met a Huron lord like this man, but he had no reason to doubt that this man was who he claimed to be. "10 men at 10,000 pieces of gold would add up to 100,000, but rumor had it that Hellel was worth 5 times that. Salia came to serve Alva's breakfast after Hellel had left. She was cordial but cold and made no comments about ale or vegetables today. Ordinarily, Alva would have found some humor in her demeanor, but he was lost in thought. Hellel seemed like such a wise sort of man. Why would he trust the mayor's judgment so implicitly? Why would the mayor recommend him after so little service? Who was the important person? Was it Lady Nera? One could always hope so, he thought with a smile. That brought to mind another question. Hope. To protect Hope? What could Lord Hellel possibly have meant by that? Oh well, Alva thought. As long as I don't have to hurt innocent people, I'll protect anyone or anything for 10,000 pieces of gold. A journey through the Curraghon Hills surely meant that his sword would be used for something other than practice for the first time in many changes of season. Once again he remembered a favorite saying of his father's. A man needs his exercise. Alva's would come soon enough. And I will see you tomorrow for a little more.